This is Ashley Newby, and you're listening to the Black Studies Podcast, a Mellon Grant sponsored series of conversations examining the history of the field. Our conversations engage with a wide range of activists and scholars, senior figures in the field, late doctoral students, cultural workers, political organizers, and everyone in between in order to explore the cultural and political meaning of Black studies as an area of inquiry and its critical methods. On today's episode of the Black Studies Podcast, we have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Wylin D. Wilson, Associate Professor of Theological Ethics at Duke Divinity School, where she teaches within the Theology, Medicine, and Culture Initiative. Her teaching and research are at the intersection of bioethics, gender, and theology. She is former teaching faculty at Harvard Medical School Center for Bioethics. She served as senior fellow at the Harvard Divinity School Center for the Study of World Religions and visiting lecturer in Harvard Divinity School Women's Studies in Religion program. She is also former associate director of education for the Tuskegee University National Center for Bioethics in Research and Healthcare and former faculty member of the Tuskegee University College of Agriculture, Environment, and Nutrition Sciences. She is currently principal investigator for the Bioethics in Black Church, Addressing Racial Inequalities in Black Women's Health in North Carolina research project, which examines the potential of the Black Church as a resource in addressing the Black maternal health crisis in the U.S. Dr. Wilson earned her PhD in Religion, Ethics, and Society from Emory University, her MS in Agricultural, Resource, and Managerial Economics from Cornell University, and her MDiv from the Interdenominational Theological Center. She is a member of the Society for the Study of Black Religion, the American Society for Bioethics and Humanities, the American Academy of Religion, and the Center for Reconciliation Advisory Board at Duke Divinity School. Dr. Wilson's publications include This Is My Body, Faith Communities as Sites of Transfiguring Vulnerability in Bioenhancement and the Vulnerable Body, a Theological Engagement, her first book, Economic Ethics in the Black Church, and her second book, Womanist Bioethics, Social Justice, Spirituality, and Black Women's Health, now out from New York University Press. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Black Studies Podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Wylin D. Wilson, Associate Professor of Theological Ethics at Duke Divinity School, where she teaches within the Theology, Medicine, and Culture Initiative. How are you doing today, Dr. Wilson?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you. It is such a joy to be here.
It's so great to have you here and to have an opportunity to talk a little bit about your book and the work that you do and how that intersects with Black studies. I know that the church and spirituality, spiritual work is something that's very integral to Black studies. So we're always excited to have people who are coming at it from that perspective on the podcast.
Yes, thank you.
So to dive in, how did you get into Black studies and what keeps you committed to doing the work of Black studies?
Yes. So, excuse me. Yes, for me, it was, I would say it really started when I was really young. As a child, I grew up attending a Black Baptist rural church, and in the Panhandle of Florida. I grew up in Florida, and in North Florida, especially in that Panhandle, it is culturally Southern. So I grew up in the South, and because of my age, I am. I was born in the 70s, early 70s, right? And so what that means is that at that time, that area in Florida was still called the Black Belt, right? And so the Black Belt, of course, known for its rich, dark soils that supported the slave economy. And then, of course, after slavery, and even now in contemporary times, the Black Belt is known for its, stagnant economies, high population of African Americans, and there's poverty, high poverty rates, unemployment, and so forth. And so, growing up and seeing the suffering of Black folk, seeing poverty, and understanding particularly rural folk, right, and how that rural experience was a dynamic in and of itself, where you could really see how the intersection, of race, health, gender, you saw all of that come together in a way that was really detrimental and even deadly, right? And so that was one of the things that got me interested in Black studies, because being a part of that rural Black church, I saw how central the church was to the Black community, right? I saw that dynamic of, the church having the priestly and the prophetic role, right? The church being so central to the lives of folk, and not just their physical lives, their economic life, their social life, right, as well as the spiritual life. So that is, I think, the makings of me as a Black scholar definitely started in that little rural church in North Florida, for sure.
Well, I know that before we got on, you started talking a little bit about um, the framework that you come to this work through, and centering community and the lives of people. Do you want to speak a little bit about how that influences the ways in which you continue to do this work, and that commitment, the continuation of that commitment?
Yes, without a doubt. When I was young, my parents always would tell myself and my brother, they say, listen, you need to go as far as you can with your education. That was like a refrain we always heard. Don't stop till you go all the way, as far as you can. But they said, but the most important thing about this education is that it's not just for you. It is for your entire community. It is for the thriving and the flourishing of folk, right? And so the work that you do, and the work that I do, is so central that the community be right there, central to that work. The absolute, the real needs, the felt needs, right? Be centered in that work. Um, and and what I love about, and what's so important about Black studies within the kind of work that I do, is that to be able to center the lives, the stories, the experiences, the struggle, but also the joy, right? And the achievements of Black folk has been so important, right? And that has been something that has kept me committed, just to see, you know, how important that's been, of course, in our past, but how important that continues to be, right, for our thriving and our flourishing
Mhm.
as folk.
Well, thank you. I think that one, that commitment to community and the fullness of Black life is so central to the work of Black studies. But I think it's also particularly important to consider, given um, your latest book, right, and the communities that it has resonated with outside of maybe like just the straight academic world. Um, so let's talk a little bit about your book,
Mhm.
and the ways in which people have been engaging it that maybe weren't as expected, but are very important and helpful for communities themselves.
Yes, yes. So my book, Womanist Bioethics, Social Justice, Spirituality, and Black Women's Health, um, has truly been a labor of love for me. It was a book that I wrote partly because of, my early formation. Um, in a community, particularly in that rural community where our church was located, where I really was able to see how deadly the combination of race and health were. Because I was born only about 10 years after the desegregation of hospitals, I was able to hear many horror stories, right, of that interaction of um, family members, but also community members in the broader Black community and in Black church, those stories about their interactions within the healthcare system. Um, and it was a system that, of course, was supposed to be centered on care, but unfortunately, Black folk were feeling unseen, unheard, right, and uncared for within a system that, unfortunately, when it got entangled with racism and these notions of race, was just really detrimental. But what was really significant about writing this book, I focused on, of course, Black women's health. That is important, but that is the starting point, right? And that's what is so important about, womanism, womanist theology, and particularly it has as its starting point the experience, and the perspective of Black women, but it is for Black women, Black men, Black babies, right? It is for other folk of color. It is for all of humanity. The goal is for the flourishing, the thriving, the healing, right, of all of humanity. And so that is what I am so grateful for in this text that is coming through. I've had I was as we were talking earlier, I was telling you about some of the beautiful surprises and folk that the book has resonated with, and some of them have been birth workers. So I've had midwives and doulas, and particularly midwives and doulas of color, to really reach out and talk about how this book has really resonated with their experience of really trying to address health disparities, maternal health disparities, maternal mental health disparities, which get even less attention, right? Um, and so that's been a beautiful surprise to be able to come alongside, accompany those women and men, because there's some male doulas out there who are attending to our mothers and babies, and then also, of course, faith communities have answered the call, because I say in the book, I'm issuing a call, right? I'm doing that. Yes, ma'am, I am. And I'm just so grateful that faith communities, so as I expected, the church, Black churches have reached out because they're answering this call to address these very important issues that deal with our health. But thankfully, even some sisters from a local synagogue here, have reached out and said they want to know what they can do to help. So that has just, I tell you, made my heart sing, because what I really have hoped in writing throughout this writing process, I wanted this book to be something that allowed for connection,
Mhm.
for folk to be able to see how we are so intricately interconnected to one another, to see how our well-being, our health is interconnected. And so to see folk getting that, right? That just, I just can't tell you how much joy it gives me.
I think it's super important, particularly right now, but also just in making plain and addressing an issue that is increasingly being talked about, but not necessarily being addressed on a widespread level
Yes,
at the level of the urgency of the issue,
that's right.
right?
That's right.
And there are many, many organizations who are working to address this, but there's not necessarily the investment from the state or the federal government in making sure that Black maternal mortality and infant mortality is adequately being combated at the level at which it is continuing to impact Black communities.
That's right.
Um, so I wanted to ask you how. So you just said you talked about coming the womanist theology, the importance of that, the centrality of that to how you're approaching this topic. What do you think that a womanist theology brings to addressing this issue in particular?
Yes, yes, yes. What womanist theology brings, because the theology itself is a response,
Mhm.
right? A response to the neglect of these voices, experiences, the bodies of Black and other women of color. And what is so significant, this is what I love about womanist theology. My goodness, right there at the center of it, at the heart of it is this love. Love is central, right? And this politics is love, as some folk like to talk about it. And this idea that particularly self-love, because I know some folk have a problem with this notion of self-love, but for Black women and minoritized women to love themselves, right? That is a radical act.
Mhm.
It is truly an act of resistance, and it is because it's standing in the face of a long history that has literally told us that we are nothing, that we are awful mothers, right? I think of things like the Moynihan Report, right? Where the Black woman was blamed for the ills of the Black family, and I just think of even throughout history how Black club women and Black church women really were always pushing back against these stereotypes of Black women as unworthy, unlovable, right?
Mhm.
as the Jezebel, and I mean, we could just go the mammy. All we can name all the stereotypes, right? But pushing back on that, and so what I love about womanist theology is so it brings that notion of love not only for ourselves, right, but for our communities, for Black men, right? For our babies. So this notion of love that is all embracing. And then also it centers healing and liberation. And so those things, this liberation is actually it's working for the flourishing and the survival of others, right? And women's theology also states that Black women's bodies are a site of divine revelation and power. Therefore, they are worthy of love, care, and respect, right? Just making some bold claims, right? some bold, just bold claims, but claims nonetheless that I think it's just so important for us, particularly in this moment that we find ourselves in this historical moment. You would hope that we were beyond having to still push back against things like the normalization of Black suffering, right?
Mhm.
You would hope that we were beyond that, but no, we are still pushing back against that. We are still pushing back against these, cultural scripts, right, that inscribe on our bodies unworthiness, right? And how we are devalued and all of that. So unfortunately we are still having to push back, and thank God for Black studies. Although we are in a moment where all of so much of what has been so significant about holding up these things that have been so important to us, our survival and our thriving as Black folk, We're in a moment where so much of that is, folk are, trying to do away with that, right? Try to to undo the narrative,
Mhm.
to to do away with the narrative, but that narrative is truly who we are, the good, the bad, and the ugly in this nation, right? And so you can't get away from who you are. We're not we can run, but we ain't hiding from that as a nation. And so I'm grateful for how Black studies helps us to continue to recover, and particularly things like a womanist, theological framework. It helps us to continue to do this excavation, right? And this recovery and uncovering of these really important stories that have fallen by the wayside of history,
Mhm.
right?
Thank you. Um, that uncovering, that
Mhm.
recovery work is so important, particularly when we talk about Black women and the ways in which they have not necessarily been their voices have not necessarily been centered or heard, um,
Yes,
both within Black studies and in the broader context of society,
that's
right?
right.
And
That's
so correcting that,
Mhm.
shifting that, making sure that Black women have a place in the broader narrative,
Yes.
especially when we're talking about their health, is
Thank you.
so like,
Hello.
let's have our voices present when we're talking about our health. That's should be basic, but here we are.
Yes, yes. And you know why, right? Another reason why that's important is because the lives of Black women testify to the current state of the healthcare system.
Yes.
And not only testifying to it, right, but, interpreting and critiquing it as well,
Mhm.
right? And that's why it's important to uncover these narratives.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I
That's right.
know that, so I teach a health disparities course, where we definitely
Mm,
talk about,
mm.
uh, the maternal mortality crisis that
Yes,
is, um, impacting Black women in the US.
yes.
I think that this will definitely be a great complement, right, to that conversation.
Mm.
Be able to bring those voices to the forefront and demonstrate like, okay, here's what a framework that will take seriously the lives of Black women and Black people,
That's right.
what it will look like. So I definitely see why
Yes.
there has been interest from outside of academic spaces, but I also do think this will be very helpful in academic.
And that's also why I include so in the book, I include many stories,
Mhm.
right? Which makes it way more interesting, right? Because, one thing you learn is as a writer, you really do you learn, unfortunately, sometimes a little too late, how not to make your stuff boring, right? You know? And so oh my goodness. And I have a Tai Chi coach. I love him, Coach Caldwell. And my Tai Chi coach always used to tell me, say, "Doc, you need to show rather than tell," And I was like, "You know what? Show rather than tell is it. That is the way to do it because these stories," and I didn't understand, as I was writing, I didn't really understand how much some of these stories would really resonate with people, right?
Mhm.
But they really have. And I'm really grateful for that because the stories are about the experience of Black women, not just within the healthcare system. Yes, that goes without saying, but also in the carceral system.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? And in the church context as well, because there's some truth telling that has to be done there, right? We have to be real. We have to be honest about some of the bad theology that has also helped to get us where we are, right?
Mhm.
Let's be real. I'm the kind of person that I believe in being real, and being upfront and open, because if we're not, you don't heal when you're trying to pretend, when we're trying to fake it. You can't heal like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, healing comes when we are upfront and honest about what is absolutely going on. What's actually going on the ground, in our hearts, in society. What is going on? When we are honest about that, that's when we're gonna have healing. But as long as we're having these little fights about, we can't tell that, that's not history. Oh, that's not no, wait a minute. We gotta tell the full story. And that's another thing that was really important for me in my book, was that, you know, through this book, I wanted to expand the narrative, right?
Mhm.
Because just like you were saying earlier, so many of these stories are untold. So many of these voices are unheard. And so what that does is that gives us this little truncated narrative that we have in this country about what America is and what it means to be American, all of that.
Mhm.
And so that is one of the things that I also was a goal for me, was to expand the narrative. Because when we have that expanded narrative, we get a much better picture of who we are, how we're connected, right? How and how I have a hand in either building you up or absolutely undoing your health, your mental health, your emotional health, your physical health. And so that was important, yeah, for me in writing.
So there's so much. But I'm gonna ask the next question, and then I'm gonna come
Yes.
back to some points that you just made. Um, but so you have your PhD in religion, ethics, and
Mm,
society.
mm,
You have an MS in agricultural resource and managerial economics,
yes.
a master's in divinity. Um, so how does that impact or influence the way that you situate yourself, in the work that you do in Black studies and womanist theologies and theological studies and ethics? Like, how are these things coming together to influence this very important work that you do?
Yeah, and that's been I think one of the most fascinating parts of my journey. In life you doing stuff, right? Like, as a kid, my daughter will always say, "Mommy, you just doing too much. You doing stuff, right? You doing so much." And so and I hear the kids say that, and I get it. I get what they're saying. We're just doing. We're going along. We're going about our way, and that's what I was doing. I was following. I was truly following my heart and a passion, particularly with going into agriculture. I always say that agriculture is my it's my first love. Truly, absolutely, I am a daughter of the soil. Um, and so that degree, to be able to study agriculture, particularly when I studied it in the 20th century, right? that was it was wild, because at that point, a lot of African Americans trying to get away from agriculture, 'cause they were like, "Wait a minute, what are you doing? Are we ain't we did we fight to get away from that?" And so, yes, I understand that a lot of people will look at that history, right? Our history with the land,
Mhm.
and culture, it is fraught. It really is fraught. But we have that beautiful intellectual tradition of W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, who help us to see that that connection to the land is also a part of our healing, right? That
Mhm.
connection to the land, to the food system, agriculture, that is all tangled up and tied up in our healing as well. And so I feel like I've really come full circle, um, in my career, because where I started I still that is still very much a part of what I do. Um, I'm working with some colleagues now, looking at issues with the food system, but particularly with, uh, online shopping, with AI and how that's being used within the food system by grocery retailers. What kind of information is being collected,
Mhm.
right, by big data systems when you go to make these purchases, and how that information can be used, particularly um, sometimes in discriminatory ways, particularly for minoritized populations. And so, there is, so much of about our food system that is very important, even in this technological age, and I've been able to see, through my career, how the food system has had and how agriculture, has had these significant changes because of technology. And so I think it's very important for us to still keep our fingers on the pulse of what's going on um, with one of the systems that absolutely keeps us nourished and and for which it provides so much when in the way of health, right?
Mhm.
But just even in the way of life, and so being able to stay close to issues of agriculture, of land, and the food system is still something that's very much important to me, and it folds very nicely into issues of health, and healthcare. So that's you know when I was working at Tuskegee University in the bioethics center there, and that is where I really was able to see, uh, a lot of pieces coming together, because I was in the College of Agriculture as a faculty member, but also in the bioethics center. And part of my work was going out um, to rural churches and helping them with issues, address issues of health disparities in their communities, right, and in their churches, and so I had to, there, and we were addressing food insecurity, right,
Mhm.
and we were addressing uh, at that time the lack of health insurance, right, and this was before we had what people call Obamacare, right? Affordable Care Act and all of that. And so, really helping faith communities address issues around food and health, because faith communities have had this, what I call a legacy of care,
Mhm.
uh, for so long, since their very existence, right? And so that is where and how I see all of these things coming together, all of these components of what I do, the theology, the health, the agriculture, all of that comes together really beautifully, um, because faith communities may no longer be the very center of Black communities, but they still are the places that are really so important when it comes to public health promotion,
Mhm.
public health interventions, right? If we are going to help folk address issues of health disparities, there's no way that you would even dream of leaving out the Black church, right? Particularly, and so that has been really wonderful for me to see all of these components and pieces come together, and they come together in the book, and that's why the book has taken the shape that it has, because it really is I think a dynamic kind of culmination of all of these things coming together. Yeah.
Thank you. I It's always interesting to me when, um, someone does an agricultural degree or studies agriculture.
Mhm.
Um, that was not my calling, but I find it increasingly interesting, right? Like, I don't get no degree in it, but it is something that I have been very interested in recent years, and then even just the ways in which there has been, um, the rise of, like, urban farms and
Yes.
understanding
Mhm,
within communities that, like, being able to grow
mhm.
your own food can help to disrupt those food deserts that were
Yes,
intentionally perpetuated in certain areas, I think has been so important.
yes.
Um,
Very
you
important,
know,
right? And
because
it's a huge part of the civil rights history. That's what I
yes,
love about agriculture, to see how we have literally ignored that part of the civil rights history. Agriculture is a big part of that, right?
mhm,
Fighting for the right to the basic need
mhm,
of being able to provide food for yourself, of having access to land, right? Oh my gosh, it's a huge part of of what it means to be human
mhm,
and to flourish, right? And to care for one another. So much is connected to the land. And I'm working on another piece now, looking at the land and how significant it is for us. And I think we have to, and we're going to have to come to terms with in this nation, not only the land that was stolen from our Native American indigenous brothers, sisters, and siblings, but we have to come to terms with, even in the Black community, because we talk about our 40 acres and a mule, but that 40 acres and a mule it first was, belonged to our Native American indigenous brothers,
mhm,
sisters, and siblings. So we need to come to terms with some of this, right? Like what's going on, and how do we right relationships? Because that's something that is also central, talking about this womanist, theological framework, um, the notion of justice within that. Uh, Justice has to do, it's beyond, kind of distribution of resources in a way that is equitable. It really has to do with the demands of a relationship. Fidelity to the demands of a relationship. So fidelity to the demands of our relationship with one another, right? With our environment, with creation, with the land, and also with divine mystery, right? So we have to really truly begin to look at, what does it mean to do justice in terms of righting these relationships that have been destroyed by dishonoring others and dishonoring the land, the earth,
mhm.
Yeah.
I think that is a point we all need to think about more. Like, this fidelity to the relationship
Mhm, mhm.
that Imma be thinking about that for a while. What that looks like,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
across different spaces and times and institutions,
Hello.
and
Mm,
having that be a central portion of justice, I think is so
mhm.
that's such an important point, right? Like, you cannot have justice without a fidelity to relationship, which I don't
Yeah,
think most people
yeah.
necessarily consider as being central to having a justice play out. Um
Yes, yes. And the one thing I always like to think about, right, is this thing right here. And I'll say this, it's one of my little mantras, right, about justice. Is in order for us to really get this clear understanding, or clearer sense of what justice means, we really have to pay attention to the needs of those who are most vulnerable among us, right?
Mhm,
Because it's by listening to folk who are vulnerable and mind you, all of us are vulnerable in some form or fashion or some phase of our lives. So no one escapes this, right? We think we do. A lot of us think we're not vulnerable. But the reality is in listening to those who are vulnerable, it actually helps us get a clearer sense of what these terms like respect and dignity,
Mhm.
right? And justice, it gives us a clear sense of what these concepts actually mean and what they look like, you know. And the most important thing about this is that when we center the needs of those who are most vulnerable among us, we are not dishonoring those who do not see themselves as vulnerable, right? But what we're really doing is we're really leaning into that gift of solidarity, right? We're leaning into what it means to really look at writing relationships, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's something that is just is so important that we do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it really goes back to, um, the idea that, like, when I don't wanna say, like, a rising tide lifts all boats, okay.
Mhm.
But, like, if we make sure that those who are most vulnerable in a particular area have what they need, everybody else is getting what they need as well, right?
Say that.
Like,
Say that.
the resources are invested.
Uh-huh.
They are there for everyone, and really combating or pushing back against the zero-sum game
Yeah,
that
yeah.
too often the US
Yes.
falls into in terms of debates over resources or what is possible, right? Like, it is not taking away
Yes.
from one person to make sure that another person has access to food. That's
Right.
increasing access across the board,
That's
right?
right.
Like, it's increasing healthcare, it's increasing
Mhm.
the resources and opportunities that are available, period.
Yes.
Taking resources and opportunities from one party to give them to another party, which
Yes. No.
that's how we got here with that conversation.
And, and you're so right, because this notion of vulnerability, because a lot of times, in our culture has done us a disservice with respect to how we understand vulnerability, right?
Mhm,
Because a lot of people think of vulnerability, nobody wants to be vulnerable because they see it as weakness, right? They see it as something that means something wrong with you. There's some flaw. There's something, you know. But the reality is that vulnerability is also created,
mhm.
right?
Yes.
It's created by, policies. It's created by these relationships we uh, not honoring others, not in right relationship, right? Because we, excuse me, we have inequities, right?
Mhm,
We have racism, we have, all these things literally eating us alive. And so these are the things that cause vulnerability, right? Yeah, the hierarchies, in our social system,
mhm.
and like you were saying, where folk, you know, the zero sum game, thinking that no, 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 I have to take from you in order for me to be well. We can't all be well. No, we can all be well, and that's what I love about, I appreciate that Black religious tradition, that Black church tradition, this notion of understanding the abundance of not only God's love and grace, but God's economy, right? There's no such thing as zero sum game, in God's economy. And when we really look at well being, um, there's, there is more than enough. And just traveling helps us see this,
Yeah.
right? I mean, my God, let me tell you, when I went to Uganda, that one country, this was a couple of decades ago, but I will never forget just how green and lush and beautiful everything was. And I was talking with my brothers, sisters, and siblings there, and they were saying, "Hey, you know, this country can feed Africa," you know, and just from what I saw, I was like, I see that, I see that, and it's like that. It's not just in Africa, but on every continent,
Mhm.
on this soil here in this nation. It doesn't make sense. It is as my grandma would say, it is a shame before God that we have children who are hungry
Mhm.
and food insecure. That you know, you that is it's just insane.
Yeah.
So that kind of vulnerability, the levels that we see it at, yeah, it's created. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's intentionally created and perpetuated. So so that some populations feel like they are less vulnerable than others. Um,
And
which
well,
which serves to mask their own vulnerabilities. Like, if you feel like you're doing better than this person, then you might not feel as vulnerable as you truly are, um,
yes.
which helps to perpetuate the cycle.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Isn't that sad? Like, not even
Yeah.
understanding. That's why I'm so grateful that those old church mothers, they instilled in us that notion of, hey, you operating in God's economy now. And there is more than enough to go around as long as we understand ourselves as being, in this grace, in this love, and operating within that, because that's where you start combating that vulnerability, right? That's where you start turning, that whole notion of Christ came and turned the world upside down. And it was because of just that. It was because of that economy that did not have domination at the forefront, but had relationship, fidelity to the demands of a relationship, justice, stewardship of one another and of those relationships. Having that at the forefront, there's no way you can't lose with that. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we are unfortunately though are now wrapped up in this, in the domination, power over instead of power with,
Mhm.
right? Yeah. Oh,
Well, thank you. I think that that is an important reminder, and it really speaks to an important perspective to take moving into everything that is currently happening right now. Just the daily,
mhm.
um, chaos
Yes, yes.
in
Yes.
this country. Um,
Yeah.
Having that fidelity to the demands of a relationship, understanding that, like, this is not a matter of scarcity. This is a matter of intentional creation of vulnerability in some communities over others, um, and a masking of the vulnerability of other communities, whether that's for a psychological and emotional benefit or greed, etcetera, is there. So,
Mm.
yeah, that is I appreciate all of that, and I want to build on that by asking how you see your work. How do you bring that to the classroom, right? How
Mm.
do you take these frameworks and help your students understand these issues or
Yeah.
allow them to develop their own frameworks that are going to help them to think about these issues in deeper ways?
Yeah, and that Imma tell you, that's been the power of this new book. So, the framework for the book, I've been using that for years in the classroom, right? And the power in that, womanist bioethics framework is just that. It is, allowing the students, because I give the students, the framework, and I say, now I need you to apply this in your own situation. because I need them to see that this ain't just about Black women.
Mm-hmm.
This is about all of us, and helping them to see that this whole, when when you're looking at the health disparities, and what I call the health crisis, because crisis for me is, it's not just a negative term. It is a term that opens up this space for us. It really and truly opens up a space for us, um, to have a whole nother way of being and doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to help them see that when you are dealing with the health issues of Black women, that is intersecting with, mirroring at times, right? Um, the health issues of other women of color, of various minoritized women globally, even white women, poor white women, that,
Mm-hmm.
so this book is not just for Black women. It is for all of us, because that's what I wanted people to see, is that, look, we have got to start seeing how we are connected to one another, and what ways that we are connected, because I think there's not a lot of emphasis on that. And I know some people will say, yeah, that's why identity politics is problematic, right? Because but I don't see identity politics as just problematic. I think when we look at these notions of identity, it helps us to open up, to expand the narrative, right? Because when we have an expanded narrative, a broader narrative of what it means to be in this country, and of this country, then I think it really helps us to be and do better, and so when I start, with that experience of Black women, and I tell students, yes, uh, we can't have we can't study Black women's bodies apart from the social and structural conditions of their existence, right? Which are constrained by race, gender, class, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the list goes on and on. Um, but you can broaden that out. You can't study Black men's bodies. You can't study indigenous folk bodies apart from studying the social and structural conditions and historical conditions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. So these are the things that's part of the way that I teach, is I try to help folk make that connection, not only with their own story, but their story and the stories of others.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that our stories, what's really important about our stories, these narratives shape us,
Yeah.
right? So there are narratives in this country, you could think of some right now, that have totally undone us, right? And now they're, kind of the reverberations of those narratives are continuing to undo us. But the significance of looking at our narrative, our own personal story, and then those communal memories that help to shape and make us, and then those national stories, right? By looking at that and seeing how our stories are intricately connected and expanding that narrative, to me, that is where the healing will begin, right? And that's where the healing needs to begin there, because until we kind of have that, stoke our moral imaginations about who we are and who we can be.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times, I swear, when we're stuck in chaos like we are experiencing in this nation right now, there is so much that's telling us who we cannot be,
Yeah.
right? And who we are not. But oh my goodness, that's why I thank God for Jesus and my grandmama, right? Let me tell you something. Woo! My grandmother. One thing I knew is that I was loved,
Mhm.
lovable, cared for, deserved to be cared for and loved and nurtured, right? We all of us are loved and lovable and deserve care, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's what keeps me committed to this work, to writing and doing this work, because I am just convinced of that we all are truly lovable. And I swear that's just, if there's anything that I could do on earth to show love, oh my God, that's so powerful.
Yeah.
To demonstrate love in all that I do. Like, can you imagine if we all walked around with that as our goal? I just want love. I want to exude love just from my very being. I wanted to, I want to speak, whatever I speak, folk just feel it. The
Mhm.
love and the care. Ah, this world would be amazing.
Yes, it would be a much different place.
Yes. But I believe with all my heart. So let me tell you. So what I'm trying to do, I want to live like that. So my pushback in this historical moment, my pushback is that I'm trying to do that. That is a goal of mine. And so I'm leaning into that. Every day that I wake up, I'm intentional about leaning into that. I ain't perfect. Lord knows I'm a hot mess, right? I am, because I'm living with people. I got my family, they get on my nerves. I love them. I get on their nerves, right? So I'm not perfect, but you know what? But I'm trying every single day to set that as my intention. How can I love through what I do? Just, I want that to define me.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? And so to set that as an intention, that's my push. That's one way that I'm pushing back.
I think that's an important one, to set that intention and to try to move in love in the day to day.
Yes.
That if we all could set that intention, like, this
Yes.
would be a much different place, and
Woo!
our interactions with each other would be much
Yes.
different.
Yes. Love is patient. Love is kind.
Yeah.
Love does not dishonor others. Right? It's not self-seeking.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
not arrogant. It's not boastful. It's not prideful. Right? Like we already have the script for what love is. I
It
didn't write it. We got it. We got that
it's there.
script.
It is there. It is there. That brought back some memories. It's been a long time since I read that particular verse, and that definitely brought back, uh, some memories, like Sunday school and learning that specifically, right? Like, we are taught that
Yes.
as children,
Yes.
and then it don't necessarily follow through
No. No.
as we grow.
Yeah, going back to the basics. So every day I'm trying to go back to the basics. I call it the First Corinthians 13 challenge. That's
Mhm.
my challenge for myself. I'm trying to read it every single day to just meditate on that. Love is patient, love is kind, yeah. I'm trying.
I like that idea,
Yeah.
to meditate on that scripture.
Yeah.
I might try that.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I've
I also think that, like, I think that that is the goal, right? Like, we should operate in love. I also realize that sometimes I don't want to. And I
Yeah.
think that getting that the meditating on it can help to shift your positioning
Yeah.
to want to do that. Sometimes it's I don't feel like loving you right now.
That's right. That's right. That is so real. That's so real. Whew, that is real. I hear you 100%. Mhm.
But it is still a worthy goal to reach for every
Yeah.
day. It was
'Cause we're 'cause we're swimming in not only this chaos, like, there's a lot of hatred. There's a lot of fear we're swimming in. And to
Yeah.
me, I know that some people think that, so some people say, oh, faith is an antidote to fear. I think love is an antidote. What is a powerful antidote to fear.
Mhm.
Because one of the things that fear does is it makes us suspicious of one another.
Mhm.
It pulls us apart from one another, right? It sets people over and against another group, right?
Mhm.
And so love to me is a powerful antidote to that. That's why I got to meditate on it every day, because I'm swimming in a culture that is literally disastrous, right? So I'm like, I got to push back. I got to keep my mind right.
Yeah.
and the needle is moving. Like I said, this challenge, right? This is the second year of me going into this challenge. So I try to read it every day. I skip some days because I get up and I'm like, oh Lord, I'm late. I gotta run out the house, right? so but I try to do it almost every day. And when I tell you it has made a difference in my life, I kid you not, it's wild. The needle has moved so slowly, right? It's a small movement, but it's huge for me.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, oh my goodness, the word works. So yeah, so it's been, I ain't gonna lie, it's been powerful, and I'm just grateful. Yeah, I'm grateful that I can met, that it's beautiful when we have resources, right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
that's the thing. This is a resource for us to meditate on such beautiful words that remind us of who we really are too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? God is love, and we literally, our body says, the word says our body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, right? So we
Mhm.
embody love.
Yeah.
Literally embody love. So this is just literally a reminder of who we are. So you already are love. Right?
Yeah. Sometimes we forget.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like you kind of have touched on these last 2 questions, but I wanna ask them so that
Mhm.
if you have anything you wanna add, you can do so.
Mhm.
Um, so what interests you most about the past of Black studies? And that's in
Mm.
both critical and excited senses first.
Yeah, I would say what interests me most is the power of it. The
Mhm.
power of Black stuff. Let me tell you something. When I was a little when I was a little girl, I had to be about, I don't know, between the ages of 12, 11, 12, 13, somewhere in there. My daddy gave me a book called Who Needs the Negro by Sidney Wylin. And the power of that book was, he had centered the lives of Black people, centered
Mhm.
our history, our experience, but in a way that raised the question of our disposability.
Mhm.
It raised the question of why and how do Black people matter in this nation? And to get that as a little girl, and I love how my daddy gave it to me, right? I was like, did he just give it? What? Because he just gave it to me. My dad is a man of few words. He said, here, you need to read this. That's it. That's all he said. Because you know what? He knew he did not have to say much, because what was screaming loudly for me in my life was being in a nation
Mhm.
that had devalued the lives of Black people for centuries.
Yeah.
He knew that was already speaking loudly enough to me, right?
Mhm.
And that to me is what excites me about Black studies, is that power that we have as a people when we start excavating,
Mhm.
uncovering, and recovering,
Yeah.
right? These beautiful stories not of only of who we are, but the prose of our intellectuals, this amazing intellectual tradition that we have to build upon.
Mhm.
Right? Oh, that's what excites me.
That is very true. I have been doing a lot of reading lately, and it has really been, like, one, the relevance of
Yes.
things from the past of the field to
Mm,
our current moment
that's
and
right.
future is evergreen. Um,
Yes.
but it's like, let's just go read what they wrote years ago because
Yes.
what we need right now, literally.
Thank you.
Um, but like you said, like the beauty in the prose, right? Like the style with which Black ideas, Black strategies,
Uh-huh.
Black stories are told is just unmatched, and being
Yes.
able to engage and know that, like, you can do this work and it not be boring. Like, it's engaging, it's
Yes.
putting words together in a way that makes even the research be poetic. I think it's just I love that
Yeah.
about Black studies. I love that about Black people, like, the rhetorical style
Uh-huh.
is just
Uh-huh.
unmatched. I that is one of my favorite things as well.
Hey, I hear you.
So what interests you or excites you about, the future, where we should go, or even, like, the present moment in what we're doing right now?
Yeah. What excites me is that, yeah, what we're doing is we are continuing to create beauty. We are continuing to see our own beauty,
Mhm,
and we are continuing to create worlds, right? For not just ourselves to thrive in, but for all of humanity to thrive in. That, and that's the power in to me in Black studies. Um and that's one of the things that was so very much instilled in me in that Black religious tradition, that Black church tradition. I'll never forget that what we do here, this whole notion of what we do here on this earth, the striving to make things better, to do
mhm,
better and be better, it's not just for us,
mhm.
right?
It's
It's for humanity, it's for everybody. And that to me, that blesses my soul because that's love, right? It's
yeah,
not self seeking, it's not for a few people. Yeah, that's love. Mm.
thank you. I think that that is a wonderful place to end it, but is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I feel like we have talked about some of everything, haven't we?
Yeah, but it was so helpful, like, I appreciate it. I think that so many of these conversations allow for, like, this, uh a moment to reflect and recenter and refocus, 'cause, it is so much going on.
Yes,
So
yes,
being able to, like, come back to, "Here's what I'm doing and why, and here are all of the amazing things that are happening in this space. Here's what we all are doing
yes.
to make this world a better place
Mhm.
for everybody,
That's it.
and to, bring that, center those voices and the lives and the accomplishments and the joy of Black people. Like, that's yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So I very much thank you for your conversation today.
Thank you. I have absolutely enjoyed this. Thank you so much. What a blessing.
Thank you. And thank you for this book. I think that it is super important. um, and is going to be integral in how different groups of people, different communities, how we can come together to continue to address the crisis that is Black maternal mortality, which, as you said, addressing that, working towards ending that crisis helps everybody. Like, that doesn't
Yeah,
just help Black women, it helps Black men, it helps
yeah.
minoritized women, it helps white women, it helps everyone
Yes,
for that to no longer be the case.
that's
So,
right.
thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.